Hi, this is Neo at Go-To Auto Repair. Today we're replacing the brakes and rotors on this 2013 GMC Acadia. Let's get to it. There's a T30 screw that holds the rotor in place. You want to take this out. I've already loosened it. So this is the caliper. In order to get to the brakes and the rotor, we have to remove it. And basically we're going to use a 1/2 inch socket to remove this. Now we've taken the two bolts out that hold the caliper in place. Now we want to hang it out of the way. I'm going to use this hanger. We don't want it to be hanging by the rubber hose. That's why we're doing this. I'm going to have to let the customer know that her CV axle needs attention. But that's not what we're working on right now. We're working on the brakes. Now, if you look over here, you'll notice that the brakes are thicker in this area or this side as opposed to this side. And usually that is an issue with the glide pins not doing what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to slide freely. This one is pretty hard to move. This one is a little bit easier. So these need to be serviced. Now I have the two rotors side by side for comparison. This is known as stock or blank, and this is slotted and drilled. The person who worked on this car before me got this wrong. The orientation of these slots and holes supposed to be the other direction. In other words, this rotor should have been on the right side, not on the left. While this rotor does not look as cool as this rotor, it will actually live twice as long. This is what the car manufacturer put on your car initially. Folks opt to put these in thinking it's superior. That's not true. If you're driving in the city, you don't really need this. Go with stock. That's what I recommend for most of my customers. Unless you want this rotor, I'm going to be installing this. These brake pads are so worn, they're literally falling apart. This is the bracket that holds the caliper. We need to get it out so we can get the rotor out. There are two bolts holding it in place. We got to get those out. Now the rotor comes out. I want you to notice this corrosion, this rust. We want to make sure we clean this. This can actually, if it builds up, it can throw off your tire balance. So we're going to be cleaning it before we put the new rotor. Now I got my face shield on and I'm ready to tackle it. To discourage rust buildup and also to prevent the rotor from sticking to the hub, I like to apply anti-seize. And now we position the new rotor. New brake rotors come from the factory with a thin layer of oil. It is applied to keep it from rust. However, we do need to clean that oil before we actually give this car to the customer. There are two ways to do this. You can wash it with soap and water, or you can use brake cleaner. However, you got to do it on both sides. I got a pan under me that's going to be catching the liquid. This is the bracket that holds the caliper. Before we start installing the new hardware, we need to do a couple of things. First, we need to clean these grooves. We need to get rid of the rust and corrosion. Because if that rust and corrosion does build in there, what ends up happening is it starts squeezing against the brake pads, making it hard for them to slide. So we got to do that. And the second thing we got to do is we're going to take these pins and we're going to basically clean them up, re-lubricate them, and put them back in. Now we take out this glide pen. We're going to clean the old lube off. Put on some new lube. I'll hydrolock it a little bit. You gotta work it in there. Make sure you get all the grease out. And as you can see, it now moves a lot easier. We want to make sure that this rubber grommet sits back where it's supposed to. We don't want the elements getting back in there or getting to that glide pin. And now we're going to apply the brake parts lubricant. This stuff needs to be able to withstand high heat. We're going to apply it in these areas where we want minimal corrosion. Apply it on both sides. Now we start seating our hardware. Now we want to wipe off all the excess grease because we don't want it to get on the rotor as we're installing it. Another reason is to minimize the attraction of road dust and debris. Now we're ready to put this back on the car. So we got our bracket installed. We're ready to compress the caliper, but we can go ahead and install our pads. The new pads are thicker than the old ones, and the hydraulic pistons on the caliper have advanced. We're not going to be able to fit it over these new pads without pushing these pistons backwards. We use a tool like this. Now we have the pistons pushed back in. Now we want to clean the surfaces and lubricate them. I'm going to start with this side. We're going to apply lube on the areas where the caliper is going to contact the pads. Now we're ready to seat the caliper. I make sure that the hose is not twisted. Now we got the top bolt in. Torquing the bottom bolt. And now I'm ready to put the wheel back on. The manufacturer wants us to torque these lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds. This right here is a torque limiting bar. I'm going to be using it to tighten these to 140. Now we're going to put the vehicle down and double check all tires with a, because I've already done the rest because the camera ran out of charge. So I got the rest done. That was the last one that I was working on. And like we said, they need to be 140 foot-pounds. We'll be hearing a click.